BBC News with Sue Montgomery. The capital of Burkina Faso is under curfew and reported to be calm after a dramatic day which began with gunfire from angry soldiers. Protesters came out in support of the mutineers. From Abidjan, Lalici reports.
Calm appears to have returned to Ouagadougou, though access to the city centre and an Air Force barracks is prohibited. Earlier in the day, access to internet was suspended. Supporters of the mutineers set fire to the headquarters of the ruling party, and the demonstration was broken up by police using tear gas. The mutineers say they want more troops to fight the Islamic insurgency, more food for frontline troops, and a shake-up over the military command. Attacks on civilians and soldiers have become increasingly frequent, mostly in the north and east of the country.
The head of the World Health Organization for Europe, Hans Kluge, has said the region could be moving towards the end of the pandemic once the current wave of Omicron has subsided. But as Danny Eberhard reports, it's not a view held universally across his organization.
The Omicron variant continues to cause sharp surges in infections across much of Europe, but in some places rates are dropping again. Hans Kluge sees a period of respite once this wave subsides, either because more people get vaccinated or because they'll have immunity post-infection. A senior WHO colleague of Hans Kluge is more cautious. Maria van Kerkhove told the BBC the pandemic would not end with Omicron, as the virus was still evolving and new variants could yet be more severe.
International nursing organisations are warning that a chronic shortage of nurses around the world has been made worse by the pandemic. A new report says that underfunding, staff shortages and burnout must be addressed to avoid a global healthcare disaster. From Geneva, Imogen Folks reports.
Before the pandemic even started, the world was short 6 million nurses, due primarily to underfunding of health systems and difficulties recruiting new staff into a profession where pay is often low and hours long. Now the new report says the relentless pressure of 2 years of COVID-19 is causing an avalanche of resignations. Combine that with nurses due to retire, and it's estimated 13 million new nurses will be needed over the next decade.
Representatives of the Taliban have held talks with Afghan civil society activists in Oslo as part of a 3-day meeting to discuss the country's humanitarian crisis. A Taliban leader described the talks as comprehensive and constructive. On Monday, the Taliban delegation will meet Western diplomats who will press for a more inclusive government and respect for human rights. BBC News. A major British investment fund, Aviva Investors, says it will vote to try to get directors kicked out of firms that fail to make good on environmental pledges. This report from Ramzan Karmali.
Aviva Investors, which has over £260 billion worth of assets under management, set out its expectations in a letter that will be sent to 1,500 firms in 30 countries this week. It believes there is more that they should be doing to become more sustainable. It's been sending out an annual letter to companies it holds shares in since 2003 and previously had set goals on climate and executive pay. It now wants them to focus on biodiversity and human rights. The fund believes it has a loud and influential voice, but is concerned that not enough investors are using their influence to make businesses more sustainable.
There have been warnings of a deepening political crisis in Honduras after the election of 2 rival speakers for Congress. Dissident members from the president-elect's party joined other groups, among them supporters of the conservative former president, to elect Jorge Calix. The incoming president, Xiomara Castro, called the move a betrayal and said she would only recognise as Speaker Luis Redondo, who was elected by her left-wing supporters in a separate vote. She threatened to refuse to be sworn in by Mr. Calix. The president of Armenia, Armen Sarkisyan, has tendered his resignation because of his inability to influence policy. Elected to the largely ceremonial office in 2018, he's been at loggerheads on a range of issues with his prime minister, Nicole Pashinyan. Burkina Faso have beaten Gabon on penalties to become the first team to reach the quarter-finals of the Africa Cup of Nations football tournament in Cameroon. Ismaila Ouedraogo scored the decisive penalty in the shootout. The Stallions will now play Tunisia, who beat Nigeria in Sunday's second match. BBC News.